Hello, class. Welcome to week 2. I'm Professor Brooks. Glad to be here with you again. Glad to see that you're still with us after our first half week. Hopefully, you've read chapter 1, which was what you were supposed to read for this week. We're going to be talking about the fundamentals of speech and the base theories that surround public speaking. That's always the first thing you do in any new class is you start with, okay, what are the elements that are going to build up along the class to make up this thing we call public speaking and how we do it. So the reading itself probably wasn't that difficult. In fact, you probably were thinking to yourself, well, this is kind of commonsensical stuff, right? It is, but it is important to consider and think about as we go forward in this class so that things that seem commonsensical right now in different contexts and as we study different perspectives will get more complex. So without much ado, let's go ahead and I'm going to share my screen and we're going to go into the almighty PowerPoint. And so here we are, fundamentals of speech. And let's move forward. So why do we study public speaking? I know this was a big part of the chapter, but I really kind of want to emphasize, I know there are a lot of people who still, they read the first chapter and they're like, blah, 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 blah. You know, I see why we study public speaking. It's important. But it really is a powerful tool, an experience to have, an important arrow in your quiver, basically, of skills, not only for your career, but in your everyday life. Now, of course, public speaking can make a huge difference with regard to your career. You know, your supervisors and bosses knowing how well you can do public speaking is definitely going to set you apart from others that you work with. But in your everyday life, you're going to have incidents where having experience with this is going to influence whether or not the outcome of those situations are successful or not. Let's say you live in a neighborhood or you live on a street out in a rural area of the county and you hear that the state wants to put a new highway bypass right alongside your neighborhood. So what can you do about that? Well, you might have networks, people you can talk to. Definitely, you want to send messages to your elected officials. You want to talk to your county officials. Absolutely. But what else can you do? Well, you might want to stir up, local support by having a sort of meeting and then giving a public speech to people who show up as to your feelings about having this bypass so close to your neighborhood. Being able to speak clearly, in an organized fashion, logically, with emotion, and being able to demonstrate your argument in such a way that you galvanize that local support is going to be important, because the more people who have a problem with something, the more your elected officials are going to hear about it and understand, okay, maybe this is something we need to do differently. Also, whenever a project like this pops up, there are opportunities for public communication with your elected officials or with the DOT or other governmental bodies. And being able to stand up in front of your county commission, your state elected leaders, the DOT, and relay your information in an organized, straightforward, logical, well-delivered fashion is going to make a big difference as to how, that local voice comes to them. You can relay the feelings of your community in such an impactful way that those officials who are making these decisions have to listen. So it's not just a matter of sitting back saying, well, gosh, what can I do? I'm just one person. Having the experience and skill set of a public speaker can put you into situations where you can foster change that you'd like to see. Here's another example. Let's say you have 2 kids that go to an elementary school and you go to a PTA meeting. And the president of the PTA stands up and says, here's what we're thinking about for this annual fundraiser that we have to do for the school. We think that we should have all the kids sell wrapping paper for the Christmas holidays. And if we want to reach our goal, the money we think we can raise to make the budget work out for us this year, all students are going to have to sell 10 rolls of wrapping paper. And it's going to equal $100 each. So these rolls are like 20 bucks, 10, 100, 10 bucks a piece. This is public speaking, it's not math. So you're sitting there thinking, I have 2 kids. We're going to have to sell 20 rolls of wrapping paper that each cost $10 a piece. You know, they can go to the grocery store or some other store and get it way cheaper than that. Plus, yeah, I've got 2 kids I got to work with. One's a first grader. Having that kid's, it's going to be me that's selling this. You know, could they pick a better product? Is there anything else we could be doing to raise money? So you know that they're going to be at the next meeting discussing this. What you can do is prepare a public speech. You're going to take your notes, you're going to work your argument out logically, you're going to practice it. You're going to maybe talk to your spouse about, you know, okay, here's what I'm planning on saying. Let me practice it for you. Is there anything I'm missing? Is there anything that doesn't ring well to the listener? So that when that next meeting pops up and they're like, okay, we'd like to take public comment about the wrapping paper fundraiser, you're able to stand up there in front of everybody in the audience and say, I am against the wrapping paper fundraiser for X, Y, and Z reasons. You've backed up all of your reasons with information. Everything is logically explained. You deliver in an emotional but confident way. And by the time at the end, you see that a lot of people in the audience are all, yes, they agree with you. We need to rethink this. We need to revisit it. Even that kind of change is possible if you have the skills and resources that you gain through public speaking. Being a good public speaker can even affect your interpersonal communication, not being able to give a speech per se, but talking one-to-one with somebody. We're going to talk about things like noise and feedback. We're going to be talking about elements of delivery that may be helpful. And as you talk to certain people, you may decide, you know, I'm talking to my colleague, or we're in this office right now, but it's terribly noisy. There's a lot of chatter going on. Let's see if I can't pull them into another location and we can talk more clearly and understandably in that location. Well, you got that skill. It's probably common sense, but you'll know through our public speaking class why it's so important to have a good location, to have a situation that is conducive to your communication. So there's a lot of reasons why public speaking is really a good skill set to develop, good experience to have, not only for your work life ahead, but your private life and for your communication with others in general. So now that we've gotten through all of that, let's go to the next one. And you might remember in the chapter, there were 4 types of preparation that you should do in advance of giving a speech, public speaking. And while all of them are important, and this is my opinion, but I think it is actually thought of by most public speakers as well, the type of preparation that gives the highest predictor of public speaking success is, let's see if you can guess. If you thought speech preparation was the answer, the 4th one that's mentioned in the chapter, you are correct. The other kinds are all very important. You need to have that mental preparation, that focus, that drive that leads you to really believe that this is an important thing to do. Physical preparation, you know, if you stay up all night long and then try to give your speech at, 10 o'clock in the morning after running through a whole bunch of other stuff, that's definitely going to impede how well your speech is going to be received. But making sure your speech is well written, that it's very well practiced, that it's been organized through an outline that has been edited and reorganized, and then practiced and practiced some more, practiced so much that all you need are a few really brief notes to kind of move you along. And you've practiced not only with the words, but what your delivery are. If you practice so well and so consistently, a little bit every day up until the point that your speech is due, there is no doubt that you're going to have success with your public speaking venture. Now, like I said, the other ones are still important. You can practice and practice and be very well rehearsed. And if you didn't get any sleep at all the night before because there was a big rager going on, that could affect your performance. But the main preparation, that's the biggest predictor of success, is absolutely being prepared for your speech. And so throughout this course, I'm going to be reminding you, keep working on your speeches. If you see you have a speech that's due in 3 weeks, and you're like, I got 3 weeks to put this whole thing together, that's plenty of time. You know, I've got time to do all this other stuff before it, and then I'll kind of push it all together at the end, will be great. It won't be great. At the end, you're going to realize how much previous work you should have been doing. You're not going to feel that confident about it. You're going to practice and practice and practice really, in such a compact span of time. It's going to actually build your anxiety while you try to force all of that information into your brain. It's going to affect how well your speech is going to come out. It's going to affect how many mistakes you make during your speech and how you respond to those mistakes. It's just, doing it a little bit at a time, keeping moving, keeping it working in your brain over and over and throughout the experience. That's what makes for a successful speech. So, like I said, I'm going to be reminding you through this course, keep working the speech. Keep working the speech. All right. Yikes, public speaking stresses me out. What can I do? And we did read in the book that public speaking is probably the number one reason that people have, or the number one type of fear that people have, is fear of public speaking. But I gotta say, it's often because of lack of preparation. I find that if you know your speech so well because you've prepared it over time, you've really given it the work it takes, that really lessens your fear. A lot of times, fear comes from lack of preparation. And preparation involves knowing the situation, knowing your messaging, knowing who you're talking to, being so knowledgeable about what's in your speech, what you're going to say. You've practiced it so many times that you can't help but just on the day of the speech going, I'm ready. Now, you might have a little bit of edginess because you never can be sure if something's going to just pop out and be different than what you expected. That's normal. Anybody who does any kind of professional public speaking will tell you they're always a little bit edgy when they're giving a speech, because you can't just be like, so relaxed that no, having a little bit of edge is good. But how do you get to that point? One, well, you might do some things like breathing techniques and stuff to keep down your anxiety, but being so well prepared that you know inside and out the speech, you're ready for it. That is the best thing you can do to lessen your stress when it comes to giving a speech. All right. One of the things that they discussed in the chapter was this transactional model of communication. Now, the funny thing is, when I took public speaking when I was in college, and I hate to say it's in the late 1980s, we were still going by the directional model of communication, where you had a speaker who has a message, and then there's a listener who receives the message. The listener projects feedback back to the speaker, who can know, oh, this is getting through, or this is a problem. And then we've since really evaluated our models, and this is the one that's most thought of as having the most pertinence to the situation that we have in our modern 21st century way of speaking. Excuse me, I'm talking so much. So I want you to be familiar with this, and why. It's because it is an awesome way to do some pre-preparing for giving your speeches. For example, if I know I'm going to be giving a speech, I'm going to be up on a stage, Talking to, I'm coming off the top of my head, a group of sixth graders. And I want to share a message about wearing seatbelts, why it's important to wear seatbelts while you're a passenger in cars. I'm a consultant that does a lot of transportation related public relations. So if you hear me doing a lot of transportation related examples, that's why. So I am going to be speaking up on a stage. I have a group of sixth graders, probably 100 of them, according to my notes, and I'm going to be talking about why you should wear seatbelts. So let's use our model to kind of do some pre-preparation for things I'm going to have to be knowledgeable about, and I'm going to have to keep in mind while I plan and write my speech. Okay, so I'm a communicator, right? And I am going to encode a message that wearing your seatbelt is important for safety if you're a passenger in a car. That's my message. Now, what's my channel going to be? Okay, well, that's a good question. My channel, I'm probably going to be up on a stage and I need to ask in advance, do I have a microphone? Is there a sound system? If there's a microphone and a sound system, I can be sure that my audience can probably hear me properly. Is it one of those lavalier microphones that I can wear on my lapel? Or am I going to have to hold a microphone? Because sometimes holding a microphone can be a little distracting unless you're really, really familiar with it. The other channel is going to be vocally. I'm going to have to use my voice directly to this audience. That's going to be downward from me because I'm up on a stage. So I'm going to have to make sure that I'm talking to all of the other communicators. In the old days, they would have been receivers. But as you know, both the speaker and receivers are communicating all the time. So I know what my message is. I'm starting to think about my channels. Let's think about my audience. They're also communicating. So if I'm looking at this big group of kids, what am I seeing while I'm talking? Some students will probably be looking at me, because some will not. Some will be just, staring off into space. Some will be slumped back in their chair like, this is so boring. So kind of seeing how many people are paying attention to me and how many people are on the bored end or the distracted end kind of will let me know how successful I'm being. So the channel going to the decoders, the people who are listening, is basically my voice. They're hearing sound waves echoing upon their eardrums. And they're also seeing me. And so if there look like there are more bored people than listening people, that comes back to me with messages. You're boring. You need to up your game. That will tell me I need to really amp up my delivery. If I look at my audience and there are more listeners than there are bored people, that lets me know I'm doing okay. And if at any point during my speaking, we seem to flip from listeners to non-listeners, or if we flip from non-listeners to listeners, I can pivot my delivery and my messaging to kind of create a very good situation where most people are listening. At the end, hopefully most people are listening, they're being entertained, but also informed. And the feedback I'm getting back at the end should be that, people are actually listening and they've understood what I'm saying. Need to think about noise in this situation. So if I'm in a cafe gymatorium at your local school and I'm up kind of on the stage, what can be some of the noise issues? Well, other kids, if they're acting up, if they're bored and just, other people can hear that and that can be distracting. Sometimes I remember when I was going to elementary school in South Mississippi, we always had these big ceiling fans going on overhead and they weren't quiet. I could have feedback with my microphone. There could be other classes changing, classrooms. in the background. All of that is distraction that students can hear or see. And I need to be thinking about, okay, are any of these issues of noise things I can do something about? If there is something you might be able to do something about in advance, awesome. If there really isn't, but you're aware that this is going to be a problem or could be a problem, that at least makes you prepared. If you're prepared, you're prepared. So let's also think about internal noise. Those were all external noise. Let's think about thoughts that the students could be having that could be preventing them from really actively listening to your speech. What time of day is your speech being given? Is it straight up in the morning at 8 o'clock, or is it 11:30 right before lunch? Is it 2 o'clock in the afternoon, or is it 3:30 right before they're let go for the day? Can you imagine which of those times you would get some really good reception and which of those times are going to be problematic? For example, if you're giving your speech and it's right before their lunch period, what's going to be happening in their brains? They're going to be thinking about lunch. They're probably going to be hungry. They're going to be thinking about, oh, who am I going to sit with at the table? I hate her. I don't like her anymore. I hope she doesn't sit at my table, but I do like him. Maybe he won't notice me. All of this kind of stuff is going to be going through their heads. If it's right before the end of the day, they might be just tired. They've had a full day of classes, and then they have to listen to a speech right before the end. Getting them first thing in the morning can often be a good thing. They're, at least awake, hopefully. And, hopefully they had a decent breakfast. Hopefully, they were ready to start their day, might be okay. Maybe 2 o'clock in the afternoon is a sweet spot. But those are the kind of things you need to think about too. Timing. Are they hungry? Are they tired? Are they awake? Did something happen to this group that might be super distracting? Anything you can find out from people arranging your speech about the timing, the day, whatever, that is actual good information that can help you decide, ooh, maybe I need to get to the point of my speech faster. Maybe instead of a half-hour speech, we make this a 15-minute speech, and then we do some interactive activity. Those are things that you really need to consider before you start working on your speech. So, as you can see, there's a lot of stuff that I think about before I give a speech that will help ensure success later on. Thinking about the possible elements that could be in play while I'm giving my speech using this transactional model of communication can be a very valuable thing to do. Let's talk about a quick one, a job related one. Let's say I'm giving a speech to an office. I'm the HR director and I've got 100 people, and I have to explain to everybody that we are going from a certain type of benefit, from one type, we're going to a different type that's going to be cheaper, but it's also going to have less actual benefit to it. Basically, we won't have to spend so much, but you're not going to get as much as you used to anyway. A lot of people have this kind of speech going on these days. So that is my message. Doesn't sound that awesome, does it? And yet we need to speak to people. So let's think. I'm the communicator, or I'm a communicator. Remember, they're all going to be communicating right back with me. And the message I want to encode is that one of the benefits we had been enjoying is going to be replaced with a new version. It's going to be cheaper, but it's going to have less actual impact than we had with our current type of benefit. That's my message. Now, channel. What channel could I use? Is this something I should give in person? Or is this something I should relate to people virtually like this? You have a lot of people delivering office or corporate-based messaging through videos such as this one. Why would we do that? Well, it doesn't put me in the same room as people who might be concerned or angry. That could be something. And if everybody's watching it independently, there's a less chance of someone who kind of distracts everybody else with their response and can possibly turn tides into their direction. If you've ever been to a meeting before where everybody was kind of, we don't know what to think about this, until one person stood up and said, I don't like this because X, Y, and Z. And then the rest of the people go, Bob is right about that. I have that very same concern. So if everyone's paying attention to the video independently, they all have to make their own independent evaluations of what they're hearing. Maybe they're happy because of the lower cost, but maybe they're unhappy because they had been getting a certain level of benefit and now they're not going to be getting that anymore. Maybe it's better to give your speech to everybody all at once. If you have a group of 50 people in your office and you have a space that can hold everybody, that could be cool. If you have a company that has 25 people, maybe it's easier to just talk to everybody all at once, rather than having to make a video, send that out, have everybody then talking to everybody and figuring everything out at that point. Choosing your channel really can affect everything else about your situation. For example, if I send a web video explaining this, what kind of noise could be involved? Well, I hate to say it, but whenever I get a video message from one of my bosses, I'm often listening to the video while I'm doing something else because I have a lot to do at my job. Or maybe some people watch the video in the morning, some people watch it in the afternoon and in the evening. We're all getting at different times, and what's happening around us can be noise. Let's say I decide I'm going to watch it on my lunch break because that's when I have free time, but I'm eating lunch. Or let's say I'm watching it in the morning, but there's a lot of people coming and going while I'm listening to my video. People are coming in for the day, getting settled and stuff. That can be distracting too. These are all things I have to think about. If I decide to give my speech in person, I need to make sure that people are comfortable in the room that we're in, but not so comfortable they're just really kind of not even listening. Need to make sure they can hear me. If I have my 25 people and we all have this big kind of conference room where everybody can kind of fit, I need to make sure they can hear me. So maybe I need a microphone, but if I don't, I'm going to have to talk in a very projected style. I'm going to have to make sure people can hear me. And I'm also going to have to be looking at feedback. How are people responding to my message? So if it goes through the channel, people are listening, they're decoding my message. The feedback that comes back, are people going, well, it's going to be cheaper. That's not bad. I'm happy to hear that. That's awesome for me because it means people are accepting the situation. However, if I'm in person and I'm seeing people go, I liked having that level of benefit. This sucks. That's going to tell me I need to maybe pivot to, well, this was a decision that was made by corporate. They evaluated a lot of data, and it turns out, according to them, most people are right at this certain level. Some people previously had been using the higher level benefits, and this is unfortunate for them, but in order for us to get the best bang for our buck, to cut costs for you as well as for us, you can pivot if you get feedback that's either negative or positive. Now, if I'm doing the video version of this message, my feedback is going to be delayed. I'm not going to get it immediately. So I'll be giving my whole message. And then at the end of my message, I might say, please let me know what you think about this message. If you have any questions or concerns, please contact HR. Well, the number of questions we get back, or angry emails, or phone calls, or, if they set up a chat group, this benefit problem, that's feedback too. It lets you know what people think. So if you get a whole bunch of questions and concerns, but they overall seem kind of positive, that lets you know, okay, the message came off well. People are okay with this benefit. If the questions and concerns come back and they're overall angry or upset or wary, that lets me know I need to do some further messaging. We need to reshape some things, how we're going to say them, and maybe we do a multi-level communication to kind of get people to feel better about this new benefit we're getting. So using this model, you can see just the different ways, the different channels I use, the different levels, types of noise I could imagine people utilizing or going through. I can kind of anticipate how my message might need to change or how I might shape the message, how long it is, how short it is. Um, there's all sorts of things that can help you make your speech better if you kind of run it through this model and kind of play around with the possibilities. And that's kind of what it is, playing with the possibilities. What happens if X happens? What happens if Y happens? What if the situation is B? What if the situation is C? It really can help you pre-prepare before you start writing and researching and doing all the dirty work of writing a speech. All right. Whew. That was enough video for today. I want to remind you that this week you do have a quiz. I know we've only been in school for a week. How can we have a quiz? Well, this quiz won't be as hard as some of the other ones, trust me. The quiz opens Wednesday, just after midnight, and it closes just before midnight, Friday going into Saturday. So you have time. Make sure you have read chapter 1. You shouldn't have much trouble with it, but I'll take a look at the questions and we'll review some of the answers if it looks like anything was particularly missed. Make sure you read chapter 3 for next week. We're going to be talking about ethics, which actually can be a complex topic. So get ready for some thinking. And please, remember I said I'd be reminding you about doing the work in pieces throughout the time that you have to prepare. Work on your any old bag speech now. Figure out what bag you're going to use, what you're going to say about it. What are all the items you're going to use? What are you going to say about them? How are you going to shoot yourself doing this speech? And maybe you want to try to practice some different ways. Maybe I'm standing up, maybe I'm sitting down. Maybe I do it in this room. Maybe I do it in that room because it's quieter. Maybe I do it in this room because it's brighter and sunnier. I don't know. Just think about things now, get prepared, because honestly, 2 weeks is not a lot of time. So quiz, read, work on your speech. 3 important things. Don't forget, you can always email me if we need to set up a one-on-one meeting using Teams or Zoom. We certainly can. I can talk to you by phone. Send me a message. I'll be happy to help you out. Have a great week too. I'll see you later.